all. Bills can win it here. White puts it down. The kick is on the way, and it is good. And the Bills have won it. The Bills have won it. The Bills have won it. They win it 41-38. Incredible. What a comeback by the Bills.
Jacksonville's perfect record on the line right here.
They put in Williams as the fullback, and he scores a touchdown, the 12th year defensive tackle.
And the fans are all over the field. Incredible. This place is pandemonium.
Welcome to another episode of Disguised Coverage. I am Anthony. I am your host here on Disguised Coverage. Find me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro 2_ANT. Give me a follow on Twitter. Or if follows aren't your thing, I will also accept pieces of Beskar armor on Twitter. So a follow or Beskar, either or. They're both A-OK in my book. You can find Disguised Coverage on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, pretty much any and every platform where you find podcasts, you will find Disguised Coverage. While you're there, please rate and review and subscribe to the pod. It is tremendously helpful, and I'm extremely grateful and appreciative of any and every review and subscription. Disguised Coverage is, of course, part of the Cover One Sports Network. So while you're there, checking out Disguised Coverage and rating and reviewing and subscribing, check out all the other awesome content under the Cover One umbrella. You got the Cover One podcast with Greg and Aaron. You've got the Hoof podcast with Sterling, another Anthony, and Eric. You've got the video and film breakdowns, courtesy of Eric Turner. Cover One has you covered, pun, pretty much every single day of the week when it comes to content creation and breakdowns of anything and everything pertaining to the Buffalo Bills. We are your leaders in that regard. Check us out. Give us follows and subscriptions and sign blood oaths and all those types of things. Title of this episode is Know Thy Enemy, Buffalo Bills versus San Francisco 49ers. And we're going to get into some matchup breakdowns for this game. We're going to get into several areas that will really determine where this game is won or lost for either of these teams. So now that this little intro is out of the way, I want to start here with this first topic, this first subject, which you'll see thrown up here if you're watching on the live stream on the banner down below. Do not sleep on the 49ers. I recognize they are a different team than we thought they were going to be before this season started. I think when the schedule came out, a lot of us saw this game as another opportunity to prove ourselves as a football team. 49ers obviously were in the Super Bowl last year. They played the Kansas City Chiefs. We saw the game against the Chiefs on the schedule and then the game against the Niners on the schedule. And it was like, okay, we play the two Super Bowl participants from last year. It's another great test. They're a good football team. They have good coaching. Let's see what we can do. And then the season starts and the actual games are played. And we see the Niners lose on opening day to the Cardinals. And we see the multitude of injuries they suffer against the Giants, and we see them lose to the Eagles, and we see them get handed pretty easily and soundly by the Packers and by the Saints, and we see them not look good at all against Seattle. We see more injuries pile up and more injuries pile up. And as we come into this game, and the Bills are sitting at 8-3, which is fantastic. And the 49ers come into this game 5-6. And I think it's easy, especially from what I've seen on the good old Twitter, I think it's easy to come into this game and think, well, they're 5-6. They've been beaten pretty soundly by a lot of teams. They've got a lot of injuries. This should be an easy game for the Bills. I do think the Bills should win this game. The 49ers are a beatable team. This is a very winnable game. This is an opponent that will test the Bills, but it should be a win for all intents and purposes for the Buffalo Bills. But if the Bills were to lose this game, I would be destroyed and I would be distraught as I am over any and every single Buffalo Bills loss whenever they come, even though they're so few and far between because the Bills win all the time. But if the Bills were to lose this game against the 49ers, I would not be shocked or completely surprised. The 49ers are still a very good football team. Well, maybe not very good. They're still a good football team. They're still a quality football team. They have good coaching. They still have some good pieces. And those are some of the things that we're going to get into throughout this episode and getting to know thy enemy, which this week is the San Francisco 49ers. Don't sleep on them. Don't think that this is going to be a cakewalk, even just from the basic superstition aspect of the fact that the Bills have not won any game that has not been played at 1 p.m. Eastern. This game is not being played at 1 p.m. Eastern. It is being played on a Monday, so it's not Sunday. It's not 1 p.m. Eastern. It's on a Monday. It's on a different time than that. I am very superstitious, as my Twitter bio says. I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious. But in fact, I am very superstitious. If you had superstitious or the word stitious on your disguise coverage bingo, then you just got a whole bunch of points just now after what I just said. Don't sleep on the 49ers. I caution you against that. They are still a good football team with quality pieces. And fun fact here from Greg. Did you know stop signs used to be yellow? I didn't, Greg. What a fun fact. If anybody else has fun facts that they want to throw into the chat, that would be tremendous. Greg is, of course, one of the hosts on the Cover One podcast. He's a great content creator and a guy who knows some stuff, but he's kind of not likable. Sorry for that. I did not know stop signs were yellow. And I just pulled up through the chat there. Last week's episode was tremendous when it came to engagement here on the live stream show with the chat. So questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, philosophies, ideologies, maxims, theorems, anything and everything, throw them into the chat. If it's pertaining to what I'm speaking about at that moment, I try to pull it up right then and there. If not, I try to get to every single thing by the end of the episode. So feel free to throw everything in there. I appreciate all of it. It's so fun and great to interact with everybody and see everybody's thoughts as we head into every week. But to get back on that, after being sidetracked by Greg's fun fact that stop signs used to be yellow, don't sleep on the 49ers. They're still a good football team. And I think we come into this game thinking, again, the injuries that have mounted up and the record that we see. And so it's thought that the Niners are pushovers. They're without their starting quarterback. They got a backup who's turnover prone. Their best player is George Kittle on offense, and he's not there. I've heard all these injuries. And that's where we're going to start with a little bit. When it comes to the 49ers, we are going to start with the injuries. The 49ers currently have 17 players on IR. They have had 40 different players on IR at some point in this season. And they have a high mix in that IR grouping of quantity and quality players. Just for this game alone against the Bills, they will be without stud defensive end Nick Bosa. They will be without stud defensive end Dee Ford. They will be without defensive lineman Solomon Thomas. I mentioned George Kittle. I mentioned Jimmy Garoppolo. They'll also be without Kaiir Williams, their starting slot corner, who's very good. The backup to Kaiir Williams is Jamar Taylor at slot corner. He's also out for this game. They're without starting safety Jaquiski Tart. Some of the injuries are long-term, done for the year. Some are 3-week IR, see what happens when they come back. There is a lot of injuries that have piled up for the Niners all year, and it's no different coming into this game. But despite that, despite the injuries, despite everything they have, I don't know if you could see or hear the notebook again. I am a notebook person. I don't type. I do the notebook thing. Despite all of that, the caution that I have going into this game, again, I've mentioned a bunch of injuries that have piled up, that have mounted for the San Francisco 49ers, but they are getting relatively healthy at some positions. And mainly those positions are wide receiver and running back. Starting last week against the Rams, a game which the 49ers won, a game that I think a lot of people didn't think the Niners were going to win. The Rams are coming off very successful and high-profile victories. Their defense is killing it. They were riding high. I don't think a lot of people had the Niners beating the Rams last week. And they did. And the Niners last week, they got back Brandon Ayuk and they got Deebo Samuel, two young, phenomenal wide receivers who are almost interchangeable in terms of how they can be used on offense. They also got starting running back Raheem Mostert back last week against the Rams. He'll play again this week against the Bills. In Ayuk and Deebo and Mostert, you have three players who are dynamic, who are versatile, who are fast, who are strong, who are athletic. Deebo and Ayuk get the ball on jet sweeps. They get bubble screens. They get tunnel screens. They can beat you deep. They can beat you over the middle. They run a variety of routes. Mostert is a burner at the running back position. If you watch the playoffs last year, your First exposure to Raheem Mostert was most likely against the Packers when he ran all over them for a multitude of touchdowns in the first half and just kept breaking big run after big run. He's a burner. He's a home run threat, but he's also got some mass and some strength to him, and he can beat you. And Samuel and Ayuk are legit, and they are pieces on an offense. Again, I know Jimmy Garoppolo is out, and backup quarterback Nick Mullins will be the one to lead them against the Bills on Monday night. But Kyle Shanahan is a phenomenal coach in the NFL. And I know, at least for me personally, he gets kind of a bad rap for how he called things for the Falcons in the Super Bowl when they choked against the Pats. Even last year, I thought when the fourth quarter rolled around, he changed his game plan. I think he starts to outthink himself a little bit in those moments. But Shanahan's a good coach, and he's a good schemer. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, he designs and architects tremendous plays and packages and route concepts and play calling and play design to get his playmakers the ball and maximize their strengths and minimize their weaknesses or opportunities. So when you have quality that returns for the 49ers, like Ayuk, like Deebo Samuel, like Raheem Mostert, with a good offensive coach like Kyle Shanahan, you can never overlook a team like that. And I know they've got holistically a variety of injuries and a multitude of injuries, but knowing that they're getting key players back at this time who made a big difference for them last week against a good football team in the Rams, those guys are going to make another difference for them this week. Don't sleep on that offense. I don't care that they're led by Nick Mullins, who we're going to talk about in a bit. I don't care that Jimmy G is out. I don't care that Kittle's out. I recognize those are important things, but don't overlook this offense as a whole. With Shanahan, anything is possible. Even if you just look at their overall record, I know they're 5-6, but to be 5-6 and have the injuries that they've had going back to week 2, and even you think about the offseason, they traded DeForest Buckner to the Colts. So he was one of their starting defensive linemen last year. Buckner's gone, and then Bosa, Solomon Thomas, and Dee Ford are all out. You basically lost your 4 best defensive linemen from the year prior, a defensive line that was a major cog and piece of why your defense was good and why you went to the Super Bowl. And even despite that, they're still 5-6. They lose their starting quarterback, and they're still managing to scrape together wins, be in a variety of games and a variety of styles. Do not sleep on them. Again, on the offense, we talked about Ayuk, we talked about Deebo, we talked about Mostert. Those are going to be the 3 pieces to keep an eye on offense. We are going to get into some more things with that offense and with the matchups. And then on defense, Richard Sherman is back. We all know Richard Sherman. He's not the corner that he once was, although I always thought that he was a bit overrated. I hope he doesn't hear me say that because I know he's very particular about how people view him. But Richard Sherman is back. One of their other corners is Jason Verrett, longtime Chargers corner, guy who always had a boatload of talent coming out of TCU, but would just suffer season-ending injury after season-ending injury. I believe he had some ACL tears, an Achilles tear, just a guy who can never stay healthy. But if he could stay healthy, he was a very good corner. Niners picked him up this offseason. He's having a very good year, and he is staying healthy, so props to him for that. Jimmy Ward, another defensive back on the Niners defense, is a safety, but he can drop down into the nickel. He can cover in the slot. He's a good tackler. He's got good speed. Eric Armstead on the defensive line. Rookie Javon Kinlaw, who they drafted in the first round this year, is a quality piece. He had a touchdown last week against the Rams, I believe. But the big stud, the big person to pay attention to on the 49ers defense is linebacker Fred Warner, somebody who I loved coming out of the draft a couple years ago. Niners got him in the 3rd round. Kudos to them for a tremendous pick. Warner is a guy who, if you don't know, is being talked about as arguably, if not the hands-down best linebacker in the NFL right now. If you watched the Packers-Colts game a couple weeks ago, Darius Leonard talked about how Aaron Rodgers crowned Fred Warner as the best linebacker in the NFL, and it gave Leonard some extra motivation for that game going against the Packers. And all props to Leonard. But Warner is tremendous. I recognize holistically all the aspects that it takes to play linebacker, especially middle linebacker in the NFL, but I don't think there is a better sideline-to-sideline linebacker in the NFL than Fred Warner. His coverage grades are tremendous. Just watching him in coverage, he's got tremendous athleticism and versatility and hip fluidity and technique, both in his feet and in his hands. He's got great play recognition, and then he's just so explosive, such tremendous burst. Really brings it all. He's fast. He's technical. He's a monster. He's a game wrecker. He makes plays behind the line of scrimmage. He can blitz. He can drop. Fred Warner is a problem every single week for every single team that plays the San Francisco 49ers. He is someone to keep an eye on in this game, in addition to the rest of the pieces on the defense. And he highlights, despite the fact that he's a linebacker, he highlights a part of the 49ers defense that's strong, which is their pass defense. And that defense as a whole, another reason to not sleep on the 49ers, as the graphic below still shows us, is that defense that is led by defensive coordinator Robert Saleh, I don't want to say a favorite for a head coach opening next year, but he will be a coordinator that will definitely get looked at. Do not be surprised if he is being interviewed by several teams for a head coaching job that will become available next year as teams start to fire coaches as the season winds down and the regular season ends. He is someone who will get offers. Ever since last year when the Niners defense just came out of nowhere and then maintained that high level, and for all intents and purposes now, they've still maintained a decently high level. I recognize all the injuries, but currently right now, the 49ers defense, again, coordinated by Robert Saleh, they're 11th in scoring defense with 23.1 points per game allowed. They're 7th in yards per drive allowed. They're 9th in points per drive allowed, despite losing so many players to injuries, again, starting in week 2 for the 49ers. They are 9th in defensive DVOA, 14th versus the pass, 10th versus the run. I mentioned the losses along the defensive line. They traded Quan Alexander to the Saints, but another linebacker, Dre Greenlaw, has stepped up in his place and played well. They just keep plugging along, no matter how much they get banged up. They may give up points and get beat here and there, but they fight and they claw and they scrap, and that's a testament to Robert Saleh and the coaching that he gives that defense, in addition to the talent they have. I mean, some might say that it's easy to scheme and call plays when you've got Fred Warner and you've got your corners playing at a high level and your safeties playing well. But, Saleh's fantastic. Again, solid head coach in Kyle Shanahan, solid defensive coordinator in Robert Saleh, solid quality players on both sides of the ball. Winnable game for the Bills, beatable team in the 49ers, but not a game that we should be sleeping on. As we move to our next segment here, as highlighted on the live stream or the video, if you're watching. If you're listening, I just pulled up a graphic that says Bills pass offense versus San Francisco pass defense. I'm also noticing all the comments that are coming through. I am going to get to those. I appreciate the engagement, the interaction that you guys are showing with each other and with me. That's awesome. Keep it flowing. It's awesome. I love it. I mentioned it earlier with Sherman and Verrett and Jimmy Ward. The 49ers pass defense, it's good. To sum it all up, they are the 4th best in terms of team coverage grade in the NFL. They're somewhat healthier now that they've gotten Sherman back. Jason Verrett, who I mentioned earlier, is the 14th best rated corner in terms of coverage grade this year. Jimmy Ward has the 8th highest safety cover grade in the NFL. Fred Warner, who I spoke about earlier and who I love, has the 5th best linebacker coverage grade in all of the NFL. Dre Greenlaw, linebacker who stepped up last year and played well and was one of the main reasons that Quan Alexander became expendable and traded away. Dre Greenlaw has the 3rd best tackling grade amongst all linebackers. They are a fast, athletic, aggressive defense, and that shows in their coverage ability. And we know what the Bills' passing offense has done. We know Allen and Diggs and Beasley, and we know the points they've put up. We've spoken about it at length on this show. I'm not going to dive too much into those numbers because we know how successful they've been. It's one of the reasons Allen and Diggs are getting tons of Pro Bowl nods. Cole Beasley leads all slot receivers in the NFL in yards receiving. He's having a great year. But the passing offense wasn't flawless last week against the Chargers, and Allen wasn't the sharpest last week. So I'm interested to see what they look like coming against the secondary of the 49ers that really get after it. Now what hurts the Niners defense has been their sacks and their pressure. They're 22nd in sacks. They're 21st in pass rush grade. Ooh, I see colors that come through. Sean Sherman, appreciate the donation with the $4.99. Thank you so much. I'm going to hit this comment real quick. Sounds like Dable needs a lot of motion. There are going to be some aspects of the motion. I think doing anything and everything that allows the Bills offense and Josh Allen to be able to easily diagnose the 49ers coverage schemes pre-snap, anything that Dable can do to increase that, like pre-snap motion, like fake motion, and anything and everything that tends to show what a coverage is doing or show what a defense is about to play or do anything to show Allen what cards the defense has. I'm down for that. I think motion will be a part of it, but there are some ways to attack this defense. And again, Sean, thank you for your support here. It means a ton to me. Thank you so much. And as I mentioned there, 49ers defense, they are 22nd in sacks. They're 21st in pass rush grade. Allen, provided the Niners don't just kill Brian Winters, provided if Brian Winters is starting again and playing a lot, Allen should have a decent amount of time. The problem is going to be the 49ers coverage. Again, they've been strong. The John Brown impact on this Bills offense, I think that is a narrative, whether you are for or against it, has started to gain more steam and more momentum after the Chargers game last week. Because again, as I mentioned, Bills won, good victory, but Allen wasn't the sharpest, was good enough to get the win. I mean, granted, we ran the ball a decent amount and were successful in the run, but Allen wasn't sharp tremendously. He didn't have a great game, one of his poorer games on the year. And again, it falls into another game where John Brown wasn't available. There's all the stats of what Allen's games look like with John Brown versus John Brown being out. And if you're a fan of that narrative that John Brown is a major cog and factor in the Bills' offense, and especially their passing offense, there was credence that was lent to your argument last week with John Brown being out. He's out again this week. And we'll see what the Bills' passing looks like against the 49ers coverage. The Bills are 6th in passing DVOA. They are 8th in total offense DVOA. It's going to be an interesting matchup. And I want to start getting to some of the comments in here that pertain to this. Comment here from PJ. Diggs can beat Sherman. He did when he played on the Vikings. This was one of my favorite highlight things to watch. As soon as the Bills acquired Stephon Diggs, there was a video out there on the old Twitter, and I think YouTube as well, maybe like 2 to 5 minutes long. There were so many, but one of them had like 3 plays back to back to back of Diggs just roasting Richard Sherman. And I mean like roasting him bad, like faking inside on the slant, then cutting back out, running a variety of routes and just beating Sherman left and right. It was tremendously encouraging to see. And I'm excited to see what Diggs can do against Sherman. I don't think Sherman matches up tremendously well with Stephon Diggs. And with their starting slot corner, K'Wan Williams, being out and their backup being out, and I know Emmanuel Mosley, their slot corner now, is a little bit banged up. I think Cole Beasley can have a pretty good day, although I think Fred Warner neutralizes some of the middle of the field and some hook zone and curl flat areas that Beasley does his work in. So I think Warner could be a problem in those areas. I think Stephon Diggs has a bigger game on the outside. I think from between the numbers and the sideline, Stephon Diggs can have a big day because I don't think the Niners have someone that can cover him. To Sean's point, Diggs can beat anyone. I don't think you're wrong on that. I think there are some corners who match up better with him than normal, but he's having a tremendous year, and he's arguably the best route runner in the NFL, if not the best route runner. Chief here. I don't know how to say the second part of your name, so I'm just going to say Chief. I'm more curious besides the front seven, who do they got besides Sherman? The front seven still scares me a bit, but nothing behind that frightens me right now. I hope with what I have gotten to already with their pass defense, and again, the fact that they are let me check the notes there to confirm. Yep, they are the 4th best passing coverage team in the NFL. Their pass defense is 4th best in all of the NFL. Verrett is having a very good year. He stayed healthy. When he's been healthy, Jason Verrett has been good, and this is another example of that this year. Sherman coming back adds stability. I know he's not what he was, and if you thought he wasn't much before, maybe you look down on him even more so or think even less of him, but he's still good enough to get it done. And Jimmy Ward, again, 8th best coverage grade amongst all safeties in the NFL. their secondary is better than you think. So I recognize the strength in the front seven that you see there, but I would argue that their coverage ability and their secondary in the back is arguably better than their front seven aspect. That's even including Fred Warner in that front seven. That coverage ability on the back end is very legitimate. Anthony Romeo here, 49ers coaching gets the most of the guys on the field. That's a tremendous point from Anthony Romeo, one of the hosts on the Hoof podcast, part of the Cover One Sports Network. Check that out. Give him a follow on Twitter as well. His content is awesome, and he wears this awesome Buffalo Bills suit every time they do an episode, and it's fantastic, and he's also extremely smart. Yeah, the 49ers coaching does get the most out of the guys that they put on the field. I don't think, again, I know they're 5-6, and I know they've had some bad losses, but you don't end up, and I know 5-6 isn't great, but being 5-6, considering they've had 40 different players on IR this year, I think the graphic that went up last week or the week before was that they've lost over like 170 games this year in terms of all the players that have been out and all the games that they've missed added together. They're on multiple positions on both sides of the ball where they've had to roll with 5th and 6th string players. And the fact that they're still 5-6 and they still have an outside shot at the playoffs is a testament to their coaching. Kyle Shanahan and Robert Saleh, who we've already spoken about. More comments coming through. In your opinion, who is the best defensive underrated player on the 49ers? Question from Ian Janicki. Ooh, in terms of underrated, I'm going to go with Jason Verrett. I don't think he's being talked about enough on this defense. And maybe it's because of all the injuries that take the storyline and then because Fred Warner is having such a great year. But it's Jason Verrett. Again, 14th best cornerback cover grade in the entire NFL. A guy who has been banged up for a majority of his career. Again, season-ending injury after season-ending injury. A guy who just couldn't stay on the field. Niners picked him up, I believe, on a 1-year deal. And he came through, and he's playing really good. He had a nice play last week where he ran down Cam Akers. He's had a good year. And with what he's done, I think, to answer your question, I think he's the best defensive underrated player on the 49ers. If you take out the word underrated, Fred Warner is the best 49ers defensive player, hands down. It's not even close. But adding that underrated piece in there, it's going to be Jason Verrett. He's had a really good year. Again, 14th best cornerback cover grade in the NFL. Really nice to see him have a bounce-back year and a year for a dude who, again, just season-ending injury, always finding himself having to reconstruct something and rehab something and just coming through. It's good to see him do that. Oh, thanks. You're welcome, Ian Janicki. Thanks for putting that up there. I appreciate you. On the other side of the ball, as we start to move through things, the Bills' run defense versus the San Francisco 49er run offense. This is something that I'm concerned about to a degree. 49ers quarterback in this game, again, will not be Jimmy Garoppolo. It will be backup quarterback Nick Mullins, who, fun fact, broke Brett Favre's single-season passing records at Southern Mississippi for passing yards and passing touchdowns. So, decently prolific career in college. No Jimmy G in this game. Raheem Mostert is back. And he spearheads a 49ers running offense that is coordinated by Kyle Shanahan, who is the son of Mike Shanahan, former Denver Broncos head coach, former coach with the San Francisco 49ers, who really refined and helped evolve the game of the zone running scheme on offense. This 49ers run game is strong. Their zone running scheme is strong. They attack the outside really well. If you do not maintain gap integrity and lane structure and lane integrity, Mostert will gash you quick. Their running backs are quality. They funnel so well into that zone-based scheme. And that's something that I'm nervous with, even just not from a running back perspective. I touched on it briefly with Deebo Samuel and Ayuk and how they get the ball on jet sweeps and screens and things close to the line of scrimmage. Samuel and Ayuk are almost built like smaller wide receivers or like smaller running backs, and they're just physical and fast and powerful and explosive. The game that Deebo Samuel got hurt in several weeks back, he had like 3 or 4 carries in that game. I believe he had a touchdown. He got hurt on a first down run. They can catch the ball. They can run on reverses and sweeps and all this type of stuff. They allow for so much dynamic play calling and so much versatility on that side of the ball. And they've got some good pieces on the offensive line that help anchor that zone scheme. Left tackle Trent Williams, formerly of the Washington football team, a very disgruntled member of the Washington football team. He was traded to the 49ers this past offseason, and he's been a revelation for that Niners offense. He is the second highest graded offensive tackle in all of football. Trent Williams, left tackle, San Francisco 49ers, second highest graded offensive tackle in the entire NFL. He has the seventh best pass blocking grade amongst offensive tackles. He's fourth in run blocking grade. Their O-line, however, is vulnerable on the right side. Mike McGlinchey has been beaten several times. He's their starting right tackle. But they've got a strong enough line, especially on the left side. Lincoln Tomlinson is their left guard, playing on that left side along with Trent Williams, who, again, is a stud and having a phenomenal year. Great pickup for the Niners. That left side is stronger than the right. And they do have a strong running game. The wild card in all of this, as I mentioned, is quarterback Nick Mullins. Backup quarterback. Sometimes he looks really good, like really good, even to the point that Niners fans, and you can see it on social media or blogs or Reddit or wherever you want to go to, there is a decent enough debate going on amongst Niners fans and even some Niners content creators and analysts who are having the discussion on who is the better quarterback and who's a better QB for the Niners, Jimmy G or Nick Mullins. And that may seem funny, and it kind of is. And maybe it means more to Jimmy G playing bad than it does Nick Mullins playing good. But at the end of the day, there's some conversation happening there because Mullins has looked good enough or decent enough in stretches. He does lack arm strength. Most of his work is going to be done between the numbers in the middle of the field and looking at his passing zone charts and next-gen stats for the last several games, especially last week and the week before. Very rarely is he thrown outside the numbers, and a heavy majority of his passes, roughly 70 to 80% every game, are coming from 15 yards and below. And having Ayuk and Deebo Samuel back is only going to increase that ability. Samuel and Ayuk are two of the best, despite the fact that they're very young in their careers. Ayuk is a rookie. Deebo Samuel is in his second year. Mullins will drop the ball off to one of those two, and their yards after the catch, their yak or their rack, if you want to do run after catch, whatever phrasing you want to use there, is fantastic. When they get the ball in their hands, they are like running backs. They're hard to bring down. They're athletic. They're shifty. They're agile. They're powerful. They're explosive. They're physical. Sometimes it's easy for Nick Mullins just to dump it down to one of them coming over on a 5-yard over, and then they run for an extra 17 yards. And the next thing you know, you have a 22-yard gain, something like that. So they try to do things that they can to make life easy for Nick Mullins. And again, when you have an offensive coordinator, well, for all intents and purposes, the offensive coordinator and play caller and designer and architect like Kyle Shanahan, who maximizes everything he can for his players and gets the best out of everybody that he has. Shout out to Anthony Romeo's point from earlier on the Niners coaching staff getting the best out of their players on the field. Shanahan does what he can to put his players in a position to succeed. And he's not going to ask a lot of Nick Mullins. And the most he might be asking is just hand it off to Raheem Mostert, who's going to run and see what they can do in the zone running scheme. And this Bills defense, for the last several weeks, and I go back all the way to that Seattle Seahawks game, they've started to turn the corner a bit. I know they turned it a bigger corner against the Jets, but I don't want to count that because the Jets are such a dumpster fire. Although, again, I will continue to say it. I don't care how bad a team is. Holding a team to 4 total yards and a half like the Bills did against the Jets in the second half of their second game of the year against the Jets, that's a tremendous accomplishment. I don't care who it comes against. That's pretty awesome. But they turned Russell Wilson over 4 times, sacked him a bunch, hit him a bunch, beat him up, contained Kyler Murray for a large majority of that Cardinals game, kept the Bills in the game in a lot of ways, in a lot of aspects. And then last week against the Chargers, I know Herbert's a rookie, but that offense was coming in hot. They were explosive. Herbert was, and he still is, on pace to break a lot of rookie passing records in just his ability to feed Keenan Allen the ball. Again, Keenan Allen, guy who led the league in targets and receptions, came into that game and he finished with 4 catches for 40 yards. They were able to limit one of the best receivers in the NFL. They were able to limit a explosive, albeit young, offense. And when it came to the run game, the Chargers got Austin Eckler back last week, and I know it was his first game back, so there's still some adjustment there for him. But he was on the field for a majority of the game. The Chargers ran the ball 24 times, and they only had 76 rushing yards on those 24 carries. But we saw some big gains that the Bills gave up. We saw some gashes. We've seen them get beat from time to time with big runs. We've talked about it at length all year, the impact Star Lotulelei opting out has had on this Bills defense, specifically the run defense, missing that big-bodied one tech to really eat up blockers and allow Tremaine Edmonds and Ed Oliver to work freer and to be able to allow the linebackers and the safeties to not have to weave through as much garbage and traffic and get hit as they come and try and make plays. We've talked about it all year. But going into this game, I'm excited to see what happens. The Bills' run defense versus the San Francisco running offense. The Niners want to run the ball. Again, Kyle Shanahan wants to do anything and everything that he can to make Nick Mullins' life as easy as possible. Mullins is also turnover prone and often at the worst times, but Shanahan is going to want to keep this game manageable for Nick Mullins and the 49ers offense. He doesn't want 3rd and long. He's going to want to keep this game in 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5. And I know you could say that, well, don't most teams want to do that? First of all, not necessarily. Second of all, yes. But I think what I'm alluding to here is more of the Niners are going to lean on that running attack, and they're going to lean on their short passing game and lean on the zone running scheme, kind of carrying things for Nick Mullins, and lean on Ayuk and Deebo Samuel doing things in the shallow parts of the field and trying to make run after catches. They're going to do whatever they can to make Nick Mullins' life as easy as humanly possible. And for a Bills defense that we've seen from the beginning of the year that they haven't met expectations, but they've started to turn the corner as of late. And I know, again, as I fix my hat, as I am one to do, I know the Niners are banged up. I know this is a backup quarterback, but this is still a decently good offense. And they do something very well, i.e. running the football and utilizing the weapons they have, which they do have good weaponry. I'm excited to see what the Bills do in this game. I'm excited to see how this defense shows up. I've been talking about it for the last several weeks. This Bills defense has started to turn the corner. I just mentioned it a couple minutes ago. And the Bills offense for the majority of the year has set the world on fire. And if we can get the Bills defense to play even just 80% of what it did last year, if we can get them to play to that level, 80% of that level from last year, and pair it with the Bills offense, we have something tremendous on our hands, potentially, going forward. And I want to see what the Bills do in this game. I want to see how they handle the run of a team that, one, does something unique in their zone scheme. And when I say unique, I mean to the point of, I don't care what other teams run a zone-based running offense. Nobody does it like a Shanahan. Whether it's Mike or it's Kyle, they are the godfathers of that scheme. Nobody does it like they do. And their offense is built to succeed in that scheme. And they've got guys who can run after the catch and test you with a variety of looks and a variety of schemes. I want to see what this Bills defense does. I also want to see how they look. I'm seeing some of the comments come through between discussions on Matt Milano and AJ Klein. The personnel aspect from the Bills, what they do on defense to match the 49ers offense, is going to be a very interesting thing. From a personnel standpoint, the 49ers on offense, they run 11 personnel. That's one running back, one tight end, 45% of the time, 21 personnel, 33% of the time, 12 personnel, 13% of the time, and 22 personnel, 8% of the time. So, as we know, the Bills' base defense, quote-unquote base defense, is primarily a nickel defense. Their starters are really, when healthy, Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano, and then their third linebacker, quote-unquote, is Taron Johnson. Or if they want to go big nickel, it's Dean Marlowe. Seeing what the Bills do in response to that, and we're already starting to see some of the comments come through with Milano and Klein, I am extremely intrigued to see if Milano comes back, which, again, I just don't want to jinx it. I don't want to count my chickens before they've hatched. But if Milano comes back, which he looks to be on pace to do, how much does he rotate in? I would like to see them ease Milano back in, especially with how well AJ Klein has been playing as of late. And I know the Bills have schemed up a lot of that success for him, but Klein has been playing well and executing as he should. you might see a little more 3 linebacker sets for the Bills. You might see more traditional 4-3 base on the field if the Bills want to match what the Niners are doing on offense. If the Niners are going to come out and throw 2 running backs or throw 2 tight ends at you, which they have a propensity to do. Again, if you're sitting there just looking at, they're either in 21 or 12 personnel 46% of the time. You're going to get a lot of sets where they're going to come out with 2 running backs, 2 tight ends. We might see some opportunities for Klein and Milano and Edmonds to be on the field at the same time. I would like to see Milano get eased into things a little bit. I don't want to rush him back. It usually takes long for a pec injury to heal. I know his wasn't as severe to the point that it would put him on season-ending IR, but that's something that can linger. I'm just always so worried with soft muscle injuries and things like that, and especially with an area of your body like your pec, which if you're playing football, you can't not use your pectoral muscle for things. I would like to see him be eased back a little bit, but it's going to be interesting to see what the Bills do on defense to combat the 49er offense when they're going to come out and try and run the ball and make Nick Mullins' life easy. Some also fun facts and some numbers. The 49ers turnover margin in their losses this year is -6. Their turnover margin in their wins this year is +10. Winning the turnover battle is going to be a key in this game. Again, Mullins is turnover prone. If we can get some fumble recoveries, if we can get some interceptions, anything and everything that is going to turn the ball over in this game helps the Bills. The 49er offense, especially with Nick Mullins, is not built to come from behind. They are not going to come out and pass the ball and spread it out and do all these things that, they can score 7 in a quick minute and a half, 2 minutes. They can't do that. They're not built for that life. That's not what they're about. So if we can do some things to get them behind the 8 ball early, i.e. score on offense, turn them over on defense, or even just stall them enough on defense to the point that we can get out to an early lead, that's tremendously helpful. And in addition to the turnovers, the 49ers, they're 17th in the NFL in turnovers per drive. They're 28th in interceptions per drive. Nick Mullins' interception percentage is 3.4%. Jimmy Garoppolo's, fun fact, was 3.6%. So they are an offense that has turned the ball over. And when they do turn it over, they lose. Win the turnover battle, take advantage of a backup QB. It should be a pretty good thing for the Buffalo Bills in this game. With that zone running scheme, the biggest thing that I'm looking for, I tweeted out a video from the All-22 against the Chargers for the Bills. There was a stop on 3rd and 1, I believe to end the third quarter, where Klein blitzed up the middle. Hyde came off the edge. Hyde tackled Austin Eckler in the backfield for a loss on 3rd and 1. But the gap integrity and the lane discipline of Quentin Jefferson, A.J. Klein, and Vernon Butler was tremendous. We're going to need that on a lot of plays against the Niners. That zone scheme is designed to take advantage of guys missing their gap, guys not maintaining their integrity, guys not taking proper angles and flowing to the football in the right way. And if we slack on that, the Niners will take advantage of it. So we've been vulnerable against the run this year for a decent amount of the year. Now we come up against a team that runs the ball effectively in their own way. They take advantage of your weaknesses. I want to see what the Bills defense looks like. Gap integrity and lane discipline, both of those things will be at a tremendous premium in this game. I want to start to get some of the questions. I see a lot of things coming through. Lone Wolf, if we run a true base 4-3, does that help with the run game and jet sweeps? It depends on how they're running things on offense. In order to help with the run game and the jet sweeps, it depends on what they're running out of. If they're running it out of 11 personnel or 21, I think if they come out in 12 personnel, so if they're coming out with one running back and 2 tight ends, or if they're coming with 2 running backs and 1 tight end, either one of those things, if they're doing either of that, if we do a true base 4-3, I think that does help out more with the running game. And I also would be okay with if we wanted to run like a bigger nickel or a bigger base 4-3, if we don't want to just flat out throw Milano out there for like 90% of the snaps, if we want to run a 4-3 with another linebacker or Marlowe or a bigger body guy to come off of the edge, I would also be cool with that because to your point of the jet sweep aspect, I know A.J. Klein has played much better of late. He's taken tremendous angles the last several games, especially against the Chargers. But I am wary of the jet sweep aspect. I still don't want A.J. Klein in space, especially against Deebo Samuel and especially against Brandon Ayuk. I don't want him in space. So the jet sweep aspect, bring me Poyer down around the line of scrimmage. Bring me a nickel scenario that adds more speed to the defense, because I am still a little worried of us being beaten around that edge, especially if they're running anywhere where Klein has to match that. I know he's been better of late. He made a lot of good plays against the Chargers. I'm still wary of him being in space. Comment here from Army of One. We need to disguise our defense fronts as much as possible. We also need to disguise our coverage too. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Yeah, anything we can do to confuse Nick Mullins. I think disguising our defense and disguising our coverages, not just for this game, but it's something that the Bills defense really hangs its hat on. And a lot of it comes from, I saw some love for Jordan Poyer. Also, another comment here from Army of One. Jordan Poyer is our best tackler so far. And he threw an exclamation point on that. Poyer and Hyde do a lot for the defense in terms of being able to disguise things and make things look one way for a quarterback pre-snap and then flipping the script come post-snap. And I like what they're able to do in that regard. They do it a lot. They disguise coverage, they disguise fronts, but especially on the back end. Anything and everything we can do in that regard, I think it's always helpful because it can mess with any QB, but especially a quarterback like Mullins, who, no offense, is inexperienced and is turnover prone. Anything we can do to make him think like, oh, okay, this can be cover 3, and then we come out and it's not. Or if he thinks, oh yeah, this can be a cover 2 and it's actually a zone blitz and it's man coverage in the back end. Anything that we can do with that, I am tremendously a fan of. So we do need to disguise our defensive fronts as much as possible. Continuing to go through the comments on here. Comment here from Lone Wolf. If Allen is on point, we can force Mullins to throw more than they wanted to. That's an excellent comment, and not just because it goes along with something I said a couple of minutes ago. Yeah, the Niners are not built to come from behind. They are not built to score fast and score quick. They're not a quick strike offense like that. They are a John Madden, matriculate the ball down the field type of offense. They are going to beat you. And I don't want to take away from Ayuk and Samuel and Mostert to a degree, but the plays that those guys break because they're explosive or because they're so fast and they have home run ability, those aren't plays that are going to be explosive in a sustainable fashion. You're not out here breaking like 75-yard runs regularly. The zone runs that Mostert breaks off in houses are a credit to the offense and a credit to him, but majority of them are going to go for like 4 yards or maybe like 12 or 15 yards. They're not going to go for a 75-yard house call with regularity. Same thing with Ayuk and Samuel. They might, catch a 5-yard over and break a tackle and take it up the sideline for a 60-yard touchdown, but the majority of times those plays aren't going to result in that. So to your point, yeah, this offense is not built for quick strike, big play offense. They are a chunk play offense or even a little chunk play offense. They're going to beat you death by 1,000 cuts and take away everything against you. Also going with another comment here from Lone Wolf, because I wanted to highlight back to this because I saw it earlier, but I didn't have it in my rhythm to get to it at the time. Milano or Klein better against the run? Matt Milano for everything, and that's not just because I love him. I also love Milano cookies, so I don't know if that's related. I like how A.J. Klein has played. I think the A.J. Klein we've seen over the last several weeks versus the A.J. Klein we were accustomed to seeing in the beginning of the year, this most recent A.J. Klein has been a revelation, but I will take Matt Milano every day of the week. And not just because of his ability, and I've seen some comments here of Milano's missed tackles, and he has had some of that, especially last year. But what Milano does in the run game, in addition to making plays himself, he disrupts so much of the opposing offense. Eric Turner from Cover One did a tremendous breakdown and thread about how some of Tremaine Edmonds' struggles have been due to missing Matt Milano. Milano makes plays, but he also does the things like meets the pulling guard in the backfield or gets by a blocking tight end really quick or avoids the seal block on the edge and then sneaks into the backfield. He might not make the play. He might not make the tackle, but he blows it up enough that it leads to Tremaine Edmonds cleaning it up and making a play, or Jerry Hughes making a play from the outside, or Taron Johnson or one of the safeties. Milano's impact, it may not just be him making the play, but he does so much that impacts the offense negatively and allows the rest of the defense to eat that I would take Matt Milano. And that's no disrespect to AJ Klein, who has filled in admirably over the last several weeks, but I will take Matt Milano every single day of the week because he's fantastic. Statement here from Andrew. Do the Bills utilize the defenses used against them in 2019, a.k.a. dare them to take shots down the field? I think you could see that a little bit in this offense. I don't think, and not even think, Mullins does not have the arm to take moonshots down the field. He is not the guy that's going to be throwing 50-yard bombs or throwing, 15-yard deep outs outside the numbers. Again, I mentioned it. Even if you just take a look at the passing chart from last week, majority of the throws came 15 yards and under. Same thing for the week before, same thing for the week prior. Mullins is a guy who's going to work the intermediate to short areas of the field. They're going to rely on run after catch. And I think you could see that, Andrew. I think you could see the Bills defense come up and say, we dare you to beat us over the top and see what happens. The only negative with that is Ayuk and Deebo Samuel are fast. They are quick. They are tremendously athletic. And sometimes in today's NFL, all you need to do is throw up a prayer or let your receiver, your talented receiver or tight end or whoever, make a play on the ball and either come down with it or the refs are going to throw the flag and it'll benefit the offense. So there's some risk reward with that notion, but I think you could see that. I would like to see that. Make Nick Mullins beat me every single play, every single drive. I don't want to get beat with the run. I don't want to get gashed to the point where the Niners are putting together 12-play, 60-yard, 7-minute drives because they're just running it for 4 to 6 yards of pop up and down the field. I don't want to see that. If the Bills lose this game, I want to lose. I don't want to lose, but I want to lose knowing, we tried to make Nick Mullins beat us, and guess what? He beat us. I think the odds of that happening are small. So let's cram the box, not get beat with the run, and let's see if Nick Mullins can beat you, and I don't think that he can. And that, my friends, I'm going to start to signal the end of this episode. If you're watching the live stream or watching the video here, you'll see Toodles, you guys, throwing up on the screen. That's arguably my favorite part of the show. Toodles is a fun phrase. I really like it. I don't know why. I think it's the oodles. It sounds fun, and it amuses me. I don't know. I might have to do a whole episode on that. Someone suggested that one time to do a whole breakdown on why I like the word toodles. That might come at some point. We might be doing that. I appreciate every single person who engaged with me on this live stream. I appreciate every single person who will consume this episode in some way, shape, or form, whether it's the YouTube video or the YouTube audio only or one of the podcasting app platforms that you're listening to, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anything and everything like that. Thank you so much for riding with me on another episode of Disguised Coverage. Again, I am Anthony, the host of Disguised Coverage. Find me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro, 2 underscores, ANT. Please rate and review and subscribe to Disguised Coverage and all the podcasting work and content creation work of the Cover One Sports Network. Thank you very much again for riding with me on this episode. Please tell all your family and friends and loved ones how awesome this show is and how tremendously handsome I am. Tell your enemies too, because you know what? Why not? Keep your friends close, enemies closer, Tell your dogs, your cats, your fish, inanimate objects. Tell, the broom in your house about how awesome the show is, because, I don't know, maybe you go to sleep and the broom comes to life and he wants to listen to a podcast or she wants to listen to a podcast. I don't know the nature of brooms and all those things. I appreciate you, Army of One, throwing up the good show comment with the little fire emojis. I appreciate you. I appreciate everyone. Thank you guys very much for riding with me on this episode, and I will see you next week.